So, as an introduction to our Great Gatsby story, hopefully you read or watched the video and you get kind of a feel for the time period and F. Scott Fitzgerald specifically. But this time period occurs between the 1900s and the 1950s. And this is a huge moment in history of growth for our nation and changes we see. A lot of times there are some disillusionment with traditions, and people are trying to find the heart of just things that matter to them. A lot of times, too, they are rejecting normalcy and what's considered normal and the typical style. And we see things like clappers evolve. And there's a lot of changes happening from an artistic perspective during this time period as well. So, we are getting over World War I here, the Great War. It had a huge effect on Americans. This is kind of their bounce back opportunity. They are celebrating youth and life because the war has been so tough and the death toll has been so great. And so there is this new energy in our country that didn't necessarily exist before. But because of this war and people being exposed to other countries and just how America survived during that time, a lot of people are questioning the American dream. And in fact, that's a big theme that happens throughout this time period as well. You know, a lot of the ideas were come to America, endless resources and opportunities. You can make anything of yourself as long as you are independent, reliant, you'll succeed. But a lot of authors during this time period really question the validity of those ideals, and we see that in Gadsby as well. Richard Cory is a really great poem that we will eventually read, just talking about people at their desperation point, a good representation of the time period. So we have just some visuals here. That kind of reflect the time period as well. All of these were created during the modern era as well. So these amazing giant structures serve as a great contrast from the Great Depression, which is also happening during this time period as well. An image here of FDR. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself, and that quote's actually referenced within The Great Gatsby as well. So some really cool things happen because of the Great Depression. Bridges, parks, libraries, roads were all funded during this time, and it caused a really great renewal in our country as well. So these are just some of our famous authors and where they're located. During this time, we see a big transition away from New England writers. Now they're coming from all areas of the country, bringing us new perspectives on life and a good female population as well. So there's a contrast here, lifestyle in France. We actually have a lot of our American writers who flee to France to live a life that's different from that offered in America. And T.S. Eliot is one of our famous writers from this time period as well. We've got some famous poets. Hopefully you recognize some of these names. And there's our guy, F. Scott Fitzgerald, most famous for Gadsby. But all of these are celebrated American writers who ended up moving and having some cynicism in regards to America. This is also a really cool time period of the Harlem Renaissance as well. We see amazing art, music, and writing coming from this time period with these authors. Langston Hughes should be a really familiar name for you. But this is a new appreciation for African American voices and sort of initiates the civil rights movement. Also, too, we've got Prohibition happening as well. That's a big theme in Gadsby. But this is just kind of an intro here for the modern era, which we will